Thank you, David. Yes, I do wonder what is next. Look forward to your next Pecha Kucha presentation. Next up, we have Darren Wagner. He's a PhD student. He's going to be talking about showing nature's naughty bits. Looking forward.
So I study the history of reproduction, and tonight I'm just going to be talking about one aspect of that, how to show your genitalia in public. It's on my mind, and specifically anatomized genitalia. Let's keep it clean. Come on, people. So looking back at the history first, you have public dissection. Dissection's great. There's some concerns. So in big centers, you'd have it in Padua or Leiden or London. You get these sort of public events. But the anatomist would always have to decide, do you cover that genitalia or do you leave it exposed when you're not dissecting it? So sometimes they drape it, and more often than not, they just open up the belly and sort of flap over some tissue. But dissection, it's not the greatest because you don't have refrigeration and you don't have modern embalming techniques. So it gets pretty funky within about 3 days. So what changes all of this is you get new technologies, new techniques, and new instruments developed. This is a range, a very fine range of fistula probes. So anal, vaginal fistulas. And it's all part of the Enlightenment empirical program of seeing more. They also developed syringes and little pipes to inflate genitalia. So this is a penis inflated. You can see it's tied off, so you blow in, then you quickly tie off before the air comes out, and then you dry it. So you're getting a lot more of that three-dimensional bigness to it. You can do it with a female genitalia as well. You can see the vasculature, you get those little Monty Python-esque glow figures piping into it. But what you get when you dry these things, you lose a lot of the color, which you really want for that reflection of nature. So they developed wax and injections with dyed water. This is a 18th century, so it's like over 200 years old. 18th century uterus and placenta with wax that's colored red and blue in the arteries and veins. So you're seeing a little bit more of how the physiology works. This is pretty spectacular. This is also wax with a little vermilion in there to get that crimson effect. The choice of the anatomists are sometimes questionable. Obviously, they want to see how erections were made or looked. And the sense of spectacle in a lot of these exhibits is quite taking. This is by an anatomist named Frederick Reusch. It's fetal skeletons with gallstones and tissue and waxed arteries in a very morbid landscape, very dramatic and theatrical. So where would you go see these things? You would see them at curiosity cabinets of independent gentlemen, or you could go to the local museum, and there's a lot of museum culture coming around at this time. This is the Hunterian Museum. Lots of natural curiosity, and genitalia did figure pretty predominantly in there. In fact, the Hunterian Museum by John Hunter, he had this is a boar epididymis from the testicle, and it's mercury injected, and he was quite, well, he really liked this and favored this. So he showed this off, not in the museum, but in his dining room, just to whet his guests' appetite. There's a couple other museums at this time, and you can see on this one on the left that you have gentlemen and ladies viewing at different times. So there's a gender politics that they're aware of. So the ladies could sort of titter together, and the guys could do the nudge-nudge, I'm sure. Another way that you get some visual display, and probably the most dominant way, is through illustration. And nearing the end of the 18th century, you get ultra-realistic illustrations being produced. This is also by Jacques-Fabien Gautier de Gautier. A nice close association with artistic modes of the time. It's very classical pose, highly stylized. And this sort of thing sort of goes throughout history, and as we'll see at the end. The last way is full wax models, mostly in France and Italy. There's one in London, which was shown at the Rackstrose Museum that was shown before. And that one had a woman chained to a table, writhing in pain, and opened up. So very, very evocative, very spectacular. So how do these very spectacular things, genitalia, enter into culture? The most obvious way is erotica. So erotic literature starts adapting these metaphors and these descriptions for their own use, such as Fanny Hill, which you may or may not have heard of. But in mid-18th century, 1751, there's a Murder Act. The Murder Act stipulates if you're convicted of murder, you will not be buried, and you are liable to, or your body will be used for public dissection. So it's seen, there's a negative connotation to any sort of dissection of that sort. So how about today? This is the Hunterian Museum today. It's lasted for 200 years. It was sort of blown up a little bit in the war, but a lot of it still exists. But now it's not the same. You don't go there because you're curious about seeing genitalia or body parts necessarily. It's looking at historical artifacts. This is more familiar perhaps. This is from Body Worlds, Van Hagen's Body Worlds. Same aesthetic as that Gautier Degotti. Sort of relaxed classical pose. Nothing really new, even though he obviously trumps himself as being new and exciting. But he did try to include this in 2009. It's a couple having sex. It was banned. It was first shown in Germany, and it was just seen as unacceptable and taken out of any exhibits. And so I suppose I leave off with the question, looking at this history, is there anything new in our culture about genital display? Thank you.